your potential guests have a lot of properties to scroll through. So it's all about capturing their attention and really honing in on a target audience, understanding who you're designing for. I think that's where a lot of people fall flat, is they design based on their personal preference, and it's not your personal residential home, it's a business. So what do you need to do in a business? You need to conduct market research. You need to understand your audience and design for them.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, I got two of the most up-and-coming interior designers in the real estate investing space. I got Bree West and Jordan McDonough. Bree, Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys taking the drive down the 5 South, Newport Beach, Los Angeles, Palisades, or Palos Verdes, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So very impressed with what you guys do. I see all your stuff on Instagram, beautiful designs. But tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing today in the space.
Yeah, thank you so much. We are designing for short-term rentals. So it's our very niche design that we do. We are helping investors cash flow more on their properties through design.
And how did this come to fruition?
We have a good origin story. So Bree and I, we started off just good friends. Our husbands were actually are kind of tied together from college days. And Bree can definitely speak on kind of her background in investing, but basically she started investing in properties, asked me to come along. My background is in interior design and art curation. And so we just knew that in order for their Airbnbs to stand out among competitive markets, we needed to step up their design. So that's how we came together kind of in the space within interior designs and Airbnbs. And it just kind of took off from there. So that's how we started. And from that point, we knew that we had a good thing going. There wasn't anyone in the space offering interior design specifically for short-term rentals and with an investment mindset there. And so we joined forces, and now we're able to offer that service offering to our clients. And that was about a year ago. So it's been a whirlwind of a year, but really, really successful and fulfilling.
And I think the key thing there is what you alluded to. You said from an investment standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of vendors out there in the real estate space that don't cater to real estate investors. And so whether it's on the design side or on the contracting side, a lot of these build outs and designs can, there's a big difference between it being catered to a primary residence and a short-term rental or an apartment building. And so I love that you guys are catering to that space. So speak a little bit about how you guys met and kind of, how it came to fruition. Because I know for me, getting into real estate investing, there's so many like other businesses that can come to fruition from just becoming an investor. So what was like the light bulb moment that made you guys realize, oh, I want to do this as well?
Yeah, exactly. When you get into investing, your wheels start turning of, like you were saying, there's so many other opportunities or branches off of real estate. So it started about 2 years ago when my husband and I decided to invest in short-term rentals. We were actually, our game plan was to do long-term rentals, and we had 2 long-term rentals under our belt. And we found Michael Elefante on social media. He has like a short-term rental academy, and we saw some of his Instagram posts and just saw how much he was cash flowing. So from there, my husband and I were like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. We were at a stage in our lives where we could do something more full on. Short-term rental investing, it can be passive, but it is a lot of active from the front of getting it up and running, going out there and setting it up, designing it. And so we switched over from long-term rentals to short-term rentals, and actually had Michael as our mentor to pave the way and teach us all that he knows. So from there, my husband and I, we really just took off running. Within a year, we invested into 10 properties. Now we're at 12. But like Jordan was saying, I brought Jordan on because my background's in marketing, and I really looked at this opportunity from a marketing standpoint of, I want to make this the best that it can be. And I saw that design was an aspect that maybe not a lot of short-term rental investors were looking at, that design can be this tool to market your property better and to stand out when people are scrolling on Airbnb, to almost stop them in their tracks and look at me, earn that click, then they're going onto the listing, and hopefully you're earning the booking from there. So Jordan is a good friend who's an interior designer. I brought her onto my personal properties. And then, the idea sparked of the design business. that there's this lull in the space, and just being able to, we connected with some other investors in the space, higher up investors who do these coaching programs, that they assured us as well that there's a huge need for design. So from there, we started Somerled. We were connected with these people to then form like a network of clients who want to do the short-term rental investing, but had the pain point of startup. And we were able to solve their pain point by offering our design services to them.
I love that. And it's huge that you guys are involved in the real estate investing space with direct ownership. Almost everyone that I work with, a lot of the girls on my team, our contractors, a lot of the designers that we work with, they are all real estate investors as well. And so like we alluded to before in the show, it's like they see it through a different lens, which a lot of people don't. I think the design element is such an important key piece to like short-term rentals, hotels that a lot of people, don't allude to. The days of, buying a short-term rental and putting some IKEA furniture in there and throwing it on Airbnb and doing pretty decent are over, especially in a lot of these markets that are oversaturated. We're in 10 markets right now around the country. Scottsdale, Arizona, for example, that's one of them. There's 6,000 plus short-term rental listings in Scottsdale alone. And so if you think you're going to buy a 4-bedroom or a 5-bedroom property out there and just throw some IKEA furniture and that you're going to crush, like you're going to get crushed, really. And so a lot of it comes down to the design element. I think another element is the bedroom count, amenities, like how do you make your property stand out? How do you make it unique? But speak a little bit about the importance of the design element.
Yeah, the design is really important. I mean, on these platforms, like you were saying, it's saturated, and they have, your potential guests have a lot of properties to scroll through. So it's all about capturing their attention and really honing in on a target audience, understanding who you're designing for. I think that's where a lot of people fall flat, is they design based on their personal preference, and it's not your personal residential home, it's a business. So what do you need to do in a business? You need to conduct market research. You need to understand your audience and design for them. That's really what sets us apart. And coming in with this investor lens and marketing lens, and then combining it with her design expertise, is really doing the research. And that's what we're all about. And we recommend that to anybody. Don't just jump in there and put something up. Do it the right way, because over the years, it's going to continue to become more competitive. You want to, from the get-go, be one of those top competing properties. So to do that, you need to research, what are the other top performing properties doing? What amenities do they offer? What does their design look like? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can go off of them, but then make it your own. Offer 1 or 2 amenities that they don't have, or push the design direction even further to stand out from the others.
I think one of the biggest mistakes that a real estate investor can make is to think that they're going to do the design on their own. I think it's okay if it's like your first 1 or 2 and you have a budget. I know my first short-term rental, I kind of backed into it. It was a 2-bedroom condo, had no idea what I was doing. And I furnished it myself. But like now I don't have the time to do it, but I'm also not the best suited to do it. And so what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make in terms of the design element?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely touched on one where you put yourself too much into the short-term rental property, and that just cannot be the case. You have to think of the perfect guest in mind when you're designing. And another kind of big mistake that we see is that people, they start the process, they jump in probably too fast. They haven't started with the strategy, they haven't done their market research. They just go to Home Goods, Target, or wherever they may go and just start buying stuff and then hoping that it'll all come together. But you need to have, to back up a second, make those design boards, get that overall design vision, make a spreadsheet, just be organized and have an overall vision and idea of what you want the short-term rental to look like. And then the whole thing is going to come together so much better. We have a whole strategy that we start off with by developing that vision that Bree touched on. It all starts with that market research and that strategy. But we also are super organized with creating design boards and getting visuals of how we want to envision the space and have it all come together once it's all ready to go for photos. So don't just throw it all together. There's a process behind it for sure.
So if you are doing a property or design in a specific market, what is the best approach to determine how that property should be designed in order to maximize the cash flow?
Yeah, we're very numbers driven. We say that we design based on data. So we leverage AirDNA to look at the top performing properties. We start there and just take notes on their amenities. We take notes on their design direction. And then we also will look at why people are visiting the area, understanding, is it more families that travel? Is it more friend groups? Is it groups of couples? That may play into the home itself. If it's going to be a large home, you're going to have larger groups. Or if it's an apartment, you may want to focus on couples. And so just creating a persona. We will also look at what is there to do in the area? Is there a lot of outdoor activities? Because people are traveling to, say, Florida. They may have the goal of relaxation, or if they're going to Miami, they may want to have a good time. So like, what are their goals? And designing to, like, they're choosing the spot, and then you want your design to look like that spot and look like what they want to envision, if it's relaxation or if it's having a good time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think it all starts with the target audience. Who's your target customer? In terms of the branding, and even with the hotels as well. I know we hired a brander with this most recent 24-unit boutique hotel here in San Diego. And a lot of it was spent early on with what does the target customer look like, and how old are they, what demographic, et cetera. And that's kind of how we determined the direction we were going to go with the naming and the branding and that sort of thing. But what softwares do you guys like to use to come up with a lot of your market data?
Yeah, so we use AirDNA, Google. We look at blog posts. We really like to follow influencers or look at influencers who are traveling to areas and what do they like to do. We also, well, when we're looking at numbers for, let's say, like a guest count, like guest count, there's some low hanging fruit that you have to increase your nightly rate. That's the overall goal that we have for every single property or every single client that we have. How can we improve their cash flow, their nightly rate? So low hanging fruit are like amenities and guest count. And we're going to do research on what other properties are doing for amenities and what they're not doing too. If it makes sense to have a putting green and no one else is doing it, or maybe there's like one or two, then we can put in a putting green. So those are kind of like the software programs that we use. We look at Google, we look at AirDNA to then look at the data and create a strategy.
So I'm curious, if, let's say, you're looking to put in a putting green, and the majority of the other listings in the market have them, is it best to go a different direction, or is it best to go with it because you're like, hey, I don't want to be the only one that doesn't have it?
Yeah, if we're seeing trends, definitely go for it. You don't want to be the only one without it because it's working. So don't reinvent the wheel, do what works, but then also do something else to stand out from the others.
Okay. What are your favorite, like maybe trending amenities to add that are like a good bang for your buck?
Yeah, I mean, we do love those putting greens. We love to have some sort of Instagrammable moment. These people are choosing the location of your Airbnb before they choose your property. And so just keeping that in mind, where, maybe in Nashville, it makes sense to do a really fun Instagram wall with a neon sign, like a photo op moment, because, most of the time it's girlfriends who are traveling there together and we want a good photo opportunity. And so if it makes sense in the market, that is something that we always like to incorporate, because our designs, we want it to be experiential and not just, it's flat. And so that's another thing. Always outdoor amenities. We always suggest doing hot tubs, any sort of like pool games. Trying to think what else like are some of our go-to amenities that we always
and
love
it's going to depend on the area too.
Of course, yeah.
If you're in a cabin, then it needs to be cozy. You need a hot tub. If you're in Phoenix and Scottsdale, you're outdoors. You want a pool to cool off, or a putting green because it's a huge golf market. So all coming back to the market research, we do design around the country, and a lot of people who invest don't care where they're investing. It just needs to make sense for the investment. So if you're not familiar with the area, we highly recommend doing all of that research to not just make a gut decision, back it by research.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one of the amenities that we've done in the past that have had like one of the biggest ROIs is a pickleball court. It's a trending thing around America right now, especially in the more affluent markets, if you would. And I know with one of our listings out in Scottsdale, as soon as we put pickleball in the listing title, the bookings and the revenue went up by like 35% overnight. So I know if you have the space to add a pickleball court, you can add one for like 30, 35 grand, a nice one. You might want to consider doing it. However, it does create a lot of noise for neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know, it's something that you look into. But I think if you have a property to where you don't have immediate neighbors in the back and to the both sides, I think it might make sense. So with the design element if someone comes to you guys and let's say they're an investor and they want you to size up their deal, quote unquote, what kind of things do you guys offer? If you are a busy professional and don't have time to invest in real estate but still want to participate in the passive income and tax benefits, my team, Summers Capital, is buying a lot of boutique hotels right now. We source the deals, we renovate the properties, and we even do all the day-to-day management, making it truly hands-off for our investors. If you want to learn more to see if we can help you, go to summerscapital.com/invest to book a call with our team. Again, that's summerscapital.com/invest. Now back to the show.
Yeah. So, I mean, every investor is coming to us with the big question of how can I increase my ROI? And so what we're going to offer to them is helping them make the decisions. You know, we're not just a design group who we ask the investor, like, what do you want? What do you want out of this? Like, we're going to back up and do the research. So we offer our expertise, like that investor mindset. And then from there, once we've made that decision on this is the best game plan and strategy, it gets passed over to design. And in the design phase, we're always just remembering that target audience, looking back at the research, looking back at the mood boards that we've created, and pushing as hard as we can to design this experience and design something that's going to stand out. One thing to note is that photos are really important for Airbnbs. Like, do not skip on a photographer, for one. But also, as a designer, we're trying to think through the photos and what are you going to be your top photos on an Airbnb listing that's so huge, your top 5 photos, because when you're scrolling, that's what the platform lets you look through before you have to click into it to find out more. So for the most part, the top photos are going to be like your wow moments, your amenities. So we're going to strategize how can we do everything that we can to make those photos stand out. Color is going to be a big thing. Wallpaper to add in more texture and pattern. If it's an amenity like a pool, put in pool floaties, just do anything to like catch somebody's attention. Then they'll click on your listing.
What are your thoughts on like one-time things that maybe are going to make the photos look great, but then they're probably not going to last? Like you
Like
said,
a
pool floaties,
yeah.
or even like some, additional landscaping or additional plants, maybe like just for the photos. And hey, these plants are probably going to die within a couple of weeks, but you do it just for the photos. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's definitely a fine line there. We actually definitely make our photos probably a little bit better than what the guest is going to experience there on the property. Your photos are going to be really important to get people to book the listing, but then we want our design to still speak for itself and add to the overall guest experience. And so some things that we do for kind of our listings is we stage all the photos. So we want it to feel inviting. We want it to feel warm and welcoming. And for these people to be looking at these photos and envisioning themselves or their group there, spending time and having a good time there. So we actually stage all of our properties with fresh food, like we do charcuterie boards, fresh flowers, leaving drinks out. And obviously those things are not going to be actually there for the guests, but it actually just creates more of a warm photo environment for them to kind of envision themselves there. So we don't add, if we were to add like an amenity there just for the photos and someone gets there, obviously they're going to be disappointed. So we kind of justify it with, small things like food, some pool floaties. But for the most part, we try to stay pretty true to what the guests are actually going to be experiencing there on the property and what is kind of marketed in those photos.
I love that you guys include the food and the beverages for the photos. I haven't heard of designers doing that before. What are your thoughts on, and we've done this a couple times, what are your thoughts on hiring models for specific photos within the property?
Yeah, I've seen that. We haven't done it before, but I've seen it in like the Coachella region, Palm Springs, because it really is like an experience. So my thoughts are it's cool and it's going to it's all about getting the person to envision themselves there. And we do that with design too. I like that you mentioned pickleball because I always think of with pickleball, like a mom booking and envisioning her family playing pickleball. So if that's going to push the marketing to the next level of someone envisioning themselves there and wanting to book it, I always say too, like the goal is for a person to look at a listing and share it with everybody. We have to stay at this place. Or if it's a mom booking, share it with her and adult kids. Like we need to book this property and give them that like urgency of I need to book this now because it's for the weekend that I want. So whatever we can do for marketing to push that.
Yeah, we hired models for my Scottsdale property, and the models were so cool. I ended up I'm like friends with 3 of them now still. And one of them was super inspired by like what we were doing when he came out. And him and his fiance ended up buying their first basically investment property.
Really?
And now it's like their first Airbnb.
Very cool.
And I helped them buy it, and like I'm so excited for them. But
That's
yeah,
cool.
it's sometimes you never know who you're gonna meet at some of these
Yeah.
these events. But man, have you guys ever had any like you guys ever get clients that they just want to be a part of every single little decision?
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's interesting because most of our clients are investors and they understand that opportunity cost of, just their own personal time and helping and letting us do stuff that we do best. And I would say the majority of our clients are a little bit more hands off. They're like, okay, you're the experts, you do your thing, and then I trust you. But yeah, every once in a while we do have a client that has a strong opinion. And that's just kind of part of the game, no matter what aspect you are in interior design, is just all that client interaction and communication and being able to be flexible to meet the needs of whoever it is you're working with.
Yeah. I've definitely been guilty of that sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, wait,
you're
I don't need to be in the whole mix.
Yeah.
I'm good at like delegating a lot of things, but sometimes like when it comes down to like a final decision on a specific like remodel, like cabinetry we're going with, or like something, if I have a strong opinion about it, I might say, hey, what about this idea? Or sometimes we'll like take it to social media and we'll just do like a public vote on it because we're
Yeah, I
like,
love it.
we're like split
that.
down the middle,
It's market research.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that sometimes. I'm like, wait, I don't need to be this involved,
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
know what? It's like we're there for every type of client. And so we understand that people have, stronger opinions than others, and that's okay too.
Yeah. What are some other big levers in terms of like generating revenue? Because I know, Jordan, you own, what is it, 11 properties that you and your husband have?
Yeah, we own 12 now. Yeah,
12.
12.
Okay. And which markets are you guys in?
So we're in Utah. That's where we started. That's where my husband and I live. Maybe regret that decision. It's not the best market to be in, but that's where we started. We're starting to sell those off. But then we moved over to Phoenix. So we have 2 in Phoenix, some in Florida and Virginia.
Okay. And out of all those markets, which one is the best performing in your estimation?
Fort Lauderdale. So
Really?
yeah, we just closed on another one in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Fort Lauderdale is very saturated, but the one that we did, it's actually a really cool case study. It was a short-term rental before, like a lot of homes in that area. And it's right on the canal system, really close to the water. It was doing 150,000 in revenue. So it was doing pretty good. But we were running the numbers and based on the design too, like we just knew that we could push it to the next level. The design of it was very basic, kind of like your IKEA home goods special. And so we came in there and we did a bachelorette place. We focused it on like this pink and green, fun, tropical vibe. And within our first year, we doubled what it was doing. So we did 300K, just over 300K. And we
Wow.
didn't do any major renovations. We simply took out all the old furniture, put in new furniture, put up lots of wallpaper, created this experience for a specific group. We knew the location was awesome, and now the design is as well. So that one's killing it. We just purchased another property that we finished designing on, and it's in the setup stage, and that one's going to be similar. It's like targeted again towards bachelorette, but it's nightlife. The other one was a little bit more light and airy. This one, it's going to have a karaoke room. It's going to have a stripper pole. It's going to have some LED
It's
lights.
super fun.
Basically, we said, okay, bachelorette group. And we had this bonus space that we're like, we could put a pool table in. I don't know if girls are going to love pool tables. So we're like, what activity do bachelorettes like to do the most? And how can we bring it inside the property so that it's like 2-in-1 experience? And that was karaoke and
the stripper
poles. Yeah. And it has a bar. Like it's like a huge common area. Well, it's not like the living room, but it's like a bonus room that we're creating this club nightlife.
I love that.
vibe.
Which market is this in?
Fort Lauderdale again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, how do you determine, because we've had to make these decisions as well to like some of our properties, is like if you tailor to the bachelorette parties, do you feel like you're losing on some of the families that want to come book? And how do you determine what the balance should be there?
Yeah, that's a really great question. A question that we get a lot of. And it really does require a lot of research and trusting the numbers to do it, because it's like I'm honing in on a really specific audience. But the way that we justify it is looking at other competitors and is anybody else in the space doing it? Like Nashville, for example, you have tons of bachelorette. Okay, so like it's working in Nashville, and we can do some research and try to get an idea of how many bachelorette groups come and when do they come? Is it just in the summer or is it going to be year round? So with specific groups like Bachelorette, it's going to be more weekend bookings. You're going to have less weekdays. So your occupancy is going to be a little bit lower, but how much can you charge per night? And it's going to be a lot more if it's like this specific group who's willing to pay more for an experience. We'll just run different case scenarios and say like, okay, if we think we can charge this much a night on Bachelorette, but it's going to be booked out at 50% occupancy versus like really broad 80% occupancy, but we're bumping down the nightly rate. Just whatever makes sense for the numbers. And for a lot of these cases, well, not a lot of the cases, but for some cases like Nashville and Fort Lauderdale, we have trusted the numbers. It's been scary. For me, I did it personally on the first Fort Lauderdale, and I was a little bit terrified of it, but trusted those numbers and yeah, doubled what the last Airbnb owner was doing.
Yeah, interesting. I'm curious, why did you guys move out of the Utah market, and which market within Utah were you in?
We were in like the college towns in Utah, and it was great. There wasn't much competition and we didn't put a lot of design into it. That's one thing. Design will make sense in most markets, but if there's not a lot of competition, if you're just in like a suburban town, then design may not make sense. And that's okay. Just do something simple. So that's what we did. We were fully occupied, had people in there all the time, but it just wasn't an experience. People don't want to pay a lot of money when they're just visiting their kid for college or maybe a group of friends who are visiting. You need to go to the markets where people are vacationing and want to spend money. And that's what we realized. It was kind of like a safety net for us a little bit. Like we just want to start here local where we're at.
Yeah.
And my husband's a mentor in the area, in the space now. And he'll share that experience that was, a decision that he wished he didn't make. He wished he would have trusted the numbers more and pushed himself from the beginning and not started in the safe zone, but went to a vacation market.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you made. I think if you're in areas that are destination areas where people are, taking bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, and they're spending a lot of money, the design element probably is even an even bigger lever than it would be in a market that's maybe more, transitory, if you would, like Albuquerque, New Mexico, or I don't know, like a Barstow, California. I'm just trying to think of areas where people only go to, stay for the night and then they're just kind of going on their way versus actually having an event there. It makes sense. And I think that's why areas like Scottsdale, Nashville do very well. I did not know that Fort Lauderdale was such a big bachelorette destination.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, it's more these girls want to go to the beach. So like, let's find a beach property, and it's a good one. It's close to Miami, a little bit less expensive for them to travel, but they still get that like Miami nightlife feel. So yeah, brings in a lot of travelers. And one of those groups is Bachelorette.
And you get a lot of the cruise ships that come in and out of there as well.
Yeah.
Are you guys seeing a slowdown? I get this question all the time, and it's a trending topic. Are you guys seeing a slowdown in terms of this Airbnb bust or a lot of these markets being oversaturated? What are you guys seeing on your end?
Yeah, no, we do get this question a lot too. And we're kind of seeing the opposite, to be completely honest. So we have been in business now for a year and we are as busy as ever. And I don't know all the logistics behind it, but what we are seeing is that investors are kind of looking forward to this downturn. They are, maybe wanting other people to be a little bit more nervous so they can come in and continue to invest and leverage their own money. And with that being said, I think it is investors who maybe are a little bit more high profile investors who maybe aren't as nervous with economic up and downs, but will invest no matter what economic client is going to be in. And so that is kind of like our ideal client, are kind of those more, those investors who maybe do have a little bit more cash on hand, who can pay for a design service, or they're willing to be spending more and putting more into their properties versus, maybe some people who are just starting out are going to be the more hesitant investors.
Yeah.
And something that I've seen with the Airbnb bust is it is weeding people out. People who used to be doing really well 5 years ago are not doing well. And they're trying to either pivot and redesign their properties, or they're backing out and selling to other investors. But I definitely think Airbnb is changing. The short-term rental space is changing, where more investors are coming in who are serious about it. This is their business. And so they're going to treat it like a business, and they're going to have employees and marketing and a design team, do all the things. And it's not just like one investor or one person with one property and just gets it up like an average listing.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think, because we have some properties that do really well. We have some that are kind of middle of the road, like just slow and steady. And then we have a few that don't do so hot. But because we have a little bit of scale, if a couple of the properties just don't have the greatest months, it's like, well, the other properties that do great make up for it. But I also feel like with the design element, it's like it's massive, and I can say that the properties of ours that do the best have the best designs. The ones that are underperforming have the worst designs, and there's definitely a correlation there.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't agree more. I think especially in those competitive markets, like if you are not investing in design, I mean, you're just kind of doomed to fail at that point. So design is so important, especially in those high trafficked, pretty competitive markets for sure.
How much should someone expect to pay for a design? Like as a new real estate investor, how do they know if they're getting a good deal on the design or if they're getting ripped off?
Hey guys, real quick, the only way this podcast grows is if you guys share it and review the show. So if you do find value, if you could take 2 seconds and drop a 5-star on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it would mean the world to me. But more importantly, it will help us reach new audiences and help more people build wealth through real estate investing.
Yeah. I mean, I think choosing the designer is important too. Like, we're coming from an investor standpoint of helping make decisions on what amenities and what strategies you should do. So as far as getting ripped off, what we're going to do like from the get-go is make sure that these investors, it's going to make sense for them. We're not in the game of just having people use us for design if it's not going to make sense. So investment spreadsheets are very important. I mean, there's lots of different ways to look at an investment, but you definitely should be running the numbers. And one way that you can tell if design is going to be worth it is just by looking at your nightly rate and determining, okay, if this is like an average case scenario versus if I bump it up a little bit more and have a little bit extra in it, I'm investing this much into design, but I can push the nightly rate up, X amount more. We don't want to like set a high expectation. You need to be very conservative with your numbers, but just looking at like your break even, like what would be the break even worst case scenario that like I pay for a design group, but I bump my nightly rate up $5 a square or $5 a night and it breaks even. Like, okay, I can justify it, but more realistically, you're going to be able to bump up your nightly rate, up to like double of what you would have done on like an average case scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. I think, you can spend a lot of money in a design, but one way to look at it is the ROI. It's like, okay, well, if you spend $100,000 on a really good design on a large property and put in maybe a jacuzzi, maybe you throw in a putting green within the $100,000 budget. Well, if you get an extra $50,000 a year in revenue off of that $100,000, that's a 50% ROI. Where else in real estate or even the stock market or any investment vehicle right now in today's environment are you going to get a 50% ROI?
Yeah.
Probably impossible to find, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always look at it in that light, in that perspective. And I also say, man, like if you are sizing up a deal and you're underwriting a short-term rental or boutique hotel, pencil in the design costs. And I always say like add like a little contingency factor. We always like to add about 25% just for change orders, not just the renovation, but for the design, because you're going to get into the design, you're in the middle of it and things are going to come up, right? Like your designer might say, hey, these things are a little bit more expensive than anticipated, or we should go with this. It's going to look a lot better. What do you want to do? And you want to be able to say yes to certain things, And so I think to have that contingency money set aside when you analyze these deals on the front end, it's like, hey, the money's already sitting there and it's there to use if you want to do it. And if the numbers pencil by using that money, then they pencil. And I think that's always the best way to approach it.
Yeah, for sure. And then just kind of another thing to add on there is whenever we are sourcing, furniture and everything to make the property, perfect and how we want it to that standard is we don't ever encourage people to be spending money just to be spending money. It has to make sense for their ROI. And so we actually source furniture that is in stock and ready to ship. We want you to be able to get that property up and running right away so you can start making that cash flow. And we want to make sure that the furniture that we're sourcing isn't going to break after a few uses, but we don't really encourage designer furniture either. That's going to take forever to ship and is going to be breaking the bank. And so it is that sweet spot of always remembering that ROI, especially with whatever pieces that you're going to be putting into the property as well.
What are your guys' thoughts on the Minoan model to where they're, the guests can go into the properties and if they like a piece of furniture, they can basically like scan the QR code and order it to their own home. What are your thoughts on that model?
It's very interesting. We recently partnered with Minoan,
okay,
by the way. Yeah. More on the ordering side because we offer a remote design package. A lot of people go with that and then they'll do their own orders. We give them all of the designs and the shopping list, and they leverage Minoan to get those discounts. So that's what we're more familiar with Minoan is, they can get you up to like 30%, I think they say, in discounts. But yeah, the QR code thing is kind of interesting to me. It's almost like you're an influencer at that point, like you're getting commission off of it. I'm pretty sure that Minoan splits the commission with you 50-50. Say there's a sofa that then Minoan can get 30% off of. They give you 15% and keep 15%. So it's fascinating. I haven't tried it myself, but Minoan's been talking to me about my, Fort Lauderdale property that I'm putting up about trying the QR code. I think I'm going to.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it's going to work.
I think it's just all part of that experiential design, right? I mean, it's not just a place to sleep anymore. Like you said, it's not just going to be IKEA furniture. So I think it is just kind of pushing the boundaries for what short-term rentals really can offer. So I think we haven't experienced it ourselves yet, but I think it can be a great added benefit for guest experience and, just another way for hosts to continue to increase their revenue.
Yeah. So tell me about the hotel aspect. I know you guys mentioned before we started recording that you're working on Blake Daly's 130 unit boutique hotel that he has. I guess it's not a boutique hotel.
It's a hotel.
That he has under contract in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Is that the only hotel that you guys are doing, or are you guys doing other ones?
Very first one.
First one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a really interesting and fun experience so far. And so we hope that this will just be a first of many. That's the kind of fun aspect of being here in short-term rental design and having that investment mindset coming into the space is that, the sky's the limit. And we really are interested in the boutique hotel space. And so I'm sure we can kind of rack your brain as well in that space and kind of, navigate it going forward just as designers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, personally, I think it's going to be the next big thing. And it's also, the next natural progression. But with all the STR regulations kind of tightening in a lot of markets, I feel like, and all the Airbnb investors out there, I think that's going to be the next thing. So we'll see. But also you have all these baby boomers that are retiring over the next 7 years. And a lot of them are the ones that own these boutique hotels. And so I think a lot of those hotels are going to be changing hands, changing ownership. And, traditionally a lot of these mom and pop owners, they don't renovate their properties. They don't put money into the design and they don't use any technology. And so from a value add perspective, I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity in the boutique hotel space, 10 million and under over the next 7 years. So I'm excited for it.
I think it's interesting too, from like the renter perspective. There's lots of people using Airbnb and those platforms, but there may be a little bit of hate that's going around with, some bad eggs out there, some bad hosts, and people have had, experiences that they don't like, but they still want that experience that's different than staying at a regular hotel. So the boutique hotel space is very fascinating of having like that middle ground of it is managed by like, a professional company, but you're getting that experience that you may get in an Airbnb property.
Yeah. There's a lot of different directions you can go with the hotel stuff, but we have one guy in our mastermind. His name's Jaden, but he owns one bed and breakfast. I think it's like a 7-room bed and breakfast, but he's going in on this kind of model to where, when we're buying the boutique hotels on our end, we're looking for hotels where guests can easily do a self-check-in, self-checkout model, and we're ideally renting out these rooms individually to all individual guests. But what he's sourcing is like smaller bed and breakfast properties to where he can host bigger parties, wedding parties, bachelorette parties that want to rent out the entire bed and breakfast. And then if the entire property doesn't get rented out by X date, because the booking lead times are typically a lot longer for bigger groups, but for these hotel rooms, the booking lead times are very, very short. Often they're like inside a week. And so he's going to first try to rent out to the bigger groups. And then let's say within a week or two, if it doesn't get rented out, he'll pivot and try to rent out the individual rooms. So I thought it was an intriguing model, but he doesn't have to worry about the regulations, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to me about the hotel space as well is it's permitted. It's like your traditional business, whereas short-term rentals, it's new. And I think cities are now coming up to speed with it and having some regulations. We're seeing a lot more of those, which as an investor myself, there's some like pros and cons to it. I see lots of pros in that it's tightening up the market and who's going to be investing. You're getting more serious investors, and it's weeding out the people who may not be taking us seriously. But yeah, the hotel space, it's like, it's been permitted, it's been around. Like the hotel that, Blake is purchasing has been around since the 70s. And yeah, you're not having to deal with any of those issues.
What did you see in that market and with that deal, like when you went out there?
Yeah, it was really cool. So I'm very familiar with Gatlinburg, which is on the other side of the mountain. This hotel is in Townsend, which is the other side of the mountain. They call it the peaceful side of the mountain. It's right by the Smoky Mountains National Park, and it's a little bit more of those nature goers. So you have lots of horseback riding, you have lots of hiking, there's lots of wildlife. And the hotel itself, it has good bones, it has a good concept, but just very outdated. It is in capturing like that lodge feeling. And, people may look at a lodge and feel like it's outdated, but we love taking a lodge and bringing it up to the current time because it's a unique feeling. Like when you're going camping, for example, people go camping, not because like they love to, well, maybe they do love to be outside, but they want to have like that experience. And like the lodge side of it is giving you a little bit of nature, in that sense that like you're outside of your own home. So we're going to take that lodge and, bring the outdoors in, but make it up to this century, because it was built in the 70s and very much feels like it's in the 70s. I should say decade. That we're in. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like with a lot of these older properties, there's a lot of like cool things you can do from an exterior standpoint just to kind of give it some better curb appeal. What are some things that you guys like to implement from the exterior?
Yeah, so for this specific property out in Tennessee, we are adding a lot of amenities. And so it doesn't have a ton right now. It does have an indoor-outdoor pool, but then there's like this big kind of field area where we're going to be adding, outdoor movies. I believe another putting green, possibly pickleball court.
Yeah, pickleball's a go,
of course. And so, and it is a little bit different with this property because there are 8 different buildings, and so each building is going to have a totally different design aesthetic. There is going to be a common thread throughout that is going to be, kind of that lodge outdoor feel, but the goal of that is so guests can come 8 different times and have 8 different experiences. And so I guess that is more specific to this hotel, but for like a normal short-term rental, curb appeal is important, but it isn't the most important thing for a listing. Most of the time it is those amenities, the interior, and the things that the people are going to be experiencing. Whereas most of the time when you're looking at a short-term rental listing, you don't see a picture of the front of the home. It's not a real estate listing. And so we do, minor things to just make it look updated, maybe a fresh coat of exterior paint, maybe switching out, locks or doors or things like that. But nothing too much that we think is super necessary for the first kind of like curb appeal moment that you may see when you pull up to the property.
Yeah. Do you think that it's necessary to have at least one photo of the exterior? Let's say, for example, you had a property that was designed to a T interior wise, but then from the exterior perspective, it was like maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing. Do you think that it's okay to maybe not even include an exterior photo, or should you always have one?
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think from the perspective of somebody booking it, they may want to confirm that it is a house, that it's not a condo, you're not sharing walls, things like that. So I think it is important because they might have a fear like, oh, I don't know, like it's the fear of the unknown. But yeah, I don't think like it would make or break your listing. If you didn't have it, I think you would still get booked out. It's just like checking that box of somebody saying this is a home.
Yeah. We've always included one, but I've always been curious, like what would happen if we didn't?
Yeah.
I think like with some properties that fit that mold, I think maybe you get more bookings, but then again, your review rating might drop because now you're not setting a clear expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
I think that's really important too. Like from a host standpoint, setting the expectation, you want your reviews to do well. So yeah, like kind of back to the question too that we were talking about earlier of, like the staging. We want it to like meet those expectations. And we will ask like our clients those questions of like, do you want to keep this? And if not, like we're going to try to like weed it out. We don't include a lot of decor too. Decor is something that's always going to get moved around, and it's not setting like a clear picture if somebody comes and it was like perfectly decorated and then now it's not. But yeah, the exterior housing is, I'm still thinking about that question as well.
What
right?
I was thinking is we always love the drone shot. So whenever we hire a photographer, we always make sure like, okay, do you have a drone? We love to get drone shots of the property as a bird's eye view. And I think that's probably going to be more beneficial than just like a front of the house shot, because then you can see proximity, you can see maybe if it's like a family, you can see proximity to like maybe a busy street. So if you have kids, or in properties like in Phoenix or Nashville or next to a big city, then you can see proximity of that property to the downtown area or to like some other site. And so I would say drone shots are probably going to be more beneficial for your overall listing than just like an exterior shot.
Yeah. Just make sure the condition of your roof looks good before you put those out
exactly.
there.
Get all the leaves off, make sure the roof's looking looking pristine.
I'm curious. You mentioned early in this show that you always try to put some sort of element that's like an Instagrammable wall or some sort of feature where people want to take photos. What are the top or maybe your favorite wall features to do or utilize for that perspective?
Oh man, we love wallpaper. Wallpaper is always a must that we have not only in like living spaces or the Instagram moment, but in every single bedroom almost. So we love doing wallpaper, neon sign. We do murals a lot. Sometimes we work with local muralists. I think that's also just a great way for additional exposure for your listing is to work with people in the area, because then they're going to start talking and maybe they'll stay there with friends or whatever it may be. But we love working with artists and muralists. We sometimes do like grass walls or some sort of like textural 3D element that always creates a really great photo as well.
I love that. Is there a specific area of the property that you guys look to do that in?
Oh, it's got to be natural light, right? No,
Of
we
course,
always
the
think like
photo.
what is going to take the best photo. And we want to encourage people to take the photo. So if it's not like a good location with good lighting, they may not. In Phoenix and Scottsdale, they have those walls that are like the cinder block walls, and those are really easy to paint, and that creates like a great photo moment because it's outdoor in the natural light. Or if there's lots of good windows, we'll do that. It's usually in a common space too. One fun thing for an Instagram photo is we've done this recently, like a large mirror, and you can put a neon sign on a mirror using double-sided Gorilla tape. So like a neon sign like this, you can tape it up. And so that way, like girls are taking selfies in front of the mirror, like they're standing about to go out, and then it has like a cute saying. The sayings are really important as well. Like you want something that they're excited about, that they want to post on their social media. It's not like too cheesy. Almost like thinking like a short Instagram caption is what we look at it. So if you're going to the beach, we'll think of like, hey, what are some like few words, short captions that you may post on social media? Let's turn that into a neon sign that a girl will want to take a photo in front of.
That's a really good way to look at it. I haven't thought about that with the neon sign. It's like, what would someone want to take a photo of this neon sign, and like, what words would you put in there? Because I think that's always the hardest part. There's so many different things you could put in there.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a favorite
Oh man.
off the top? I know I'm putting you guys on the spot here.
Oh, we have so many fun neon signs that we've done. In her Fort Lauderdale house that she was talking about, that is kind of light and airy bachelorette theme. We did like high tides and good vibes. Wasn't that it?
Yeah, that was it.
And that
That's
was
a
really
fun
fun. We did Cowgirl Casanova in a Nashville one. That was the one that we actually did on the mirror, and it creates like a really fun selfie moment. And that was a Carrie Underwood themed bedroom.
Really?
So it was, it definitely went with the theme, and that was a lot of fun. But I love how neon signs too, it can create a personality for your Airbnb. I mean, that could be your Wi-Fi password. Maybe that's like your title for your listing. I mean, neon signs are just, such an easy way to create a whole overall experience and personality for your listing.
We got one right here in the
Yeah, there
podcast
you
set, right
go.
behind
It's a
you.
great one.
But yeah, I agree. And it doesn't cost too much money to put a neon sign up there.
Yeah.
They last forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know how long they last, but I know with a lot of our listings, we just keep them on. This one stays on a lot of times, but that's cool. So with Blake's Hotel, real quick, I want to go back to that for a second. You mentioned there's 8 buildings, and each of the 8 buildings is going to have a different design element. Give me an example of like one's going to be this versus the other one's going to be that.
Yeah, so we do have one that is a little bit more of like a modern aesthetic. We're kind of thinking like we definitely still want to have it feel luxurious for maybe guests who are coming for, maybe it's like a couple who is staying together, or again, just going back to that market research, we've kind of determined, who's going to be traveling. So we have one that we're calling Mountain Modern. that is a little bit more of that modern aesthetic. We have one that is more rustic. We're reusing some beds that have been there on the property that are like these cool, like solid wood, like log looking beds. So we're leaning into that completely, doing one that's rustic. Going back to the activities, there's lots of horseback riding. So we have kind of like a rancher aesthetic one, but also a more traditional equestrian feel for a building. Those are some of my favorites that we've done so far. And yeah, so it does have that common thread of everything that is, Townsend specific, but still, interesting and different enough in each of those buildings.
Yeah, I love that. I want to go back to a question I was thinking of earlier. If someone is underwriting or analyzing a short-term rental deal, what would you tell them to assume for the design costs? Is there like a general rule of thumb that you can go off of based on the bedroom count or the square footage of the property?
Yeah, square footage is a good way to look at it. On the low end, you're looking around like 5 to 6 grand. On the high end, maybe 20 or above. Just it really is based on the square footage. You could have a studio apartment or a big 8-bedroom home. We've done all of the above. So yeah, I mean, being like you were saying, like having some contingency and going on the high side, then reaching out to designers and vetting out who's going to allow you, like who are you going to leverage to increase your nightly rate and increase, like hopefully, increase your overall ROI, but having like some contingency when you're looking at it from the beginning, then just doing your research on designers.
Yeah, the contingency is huge to have because I think there's always going to be some decisions that need to be made, and you want to be able to say yes if you can,
Yeah.
especially if it's an important one. Like I give an example recently, like we're designing this boutique hotel. We're renovating it right now, and it's 24 units here in San Diego. But one of the questions that came up was like, hey, we're not going to be able to fit the wall sconces within our budget any longer. So are we okay doing lamps on the side table versus the wall sconces? I'm like, well, the wall sconces look way more classy, way more legit.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, no, let's do it. We have the contingency money already set aside. So I'm like, let's do it. And I think it's going to photograph way better from the guest experience. It's going to look a little bit nicer. So I'm glad we did. And another example was like out in Scottsdale, we're doing a renovation and we did a full basketball court out there. We're going to. And at the time, there was this big like Taiwanese like chip factory that was coming in. And it was like the biggest real estate project out in North Phoenix at the time. And they were taking up all the concrete. And so my contractor was like, hey, we're not going to be able to fit this full court in the budget anymore. The cost of concrete has doubled. Do you want to just do a half? I'm like, well, it's not really the same pot to do a half court. I'm like, no, let's do the full, And so that's a good example. So I think, whether it's a renovation or design, I think it's always smart to just having that contingency capital. And it also gives you as an investor a little peace of mind and know, hey, like I have a little extra money for the things that go unaccepted,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And honestly, it's always better at the end of the day when you're listing your property to be super proud of it. You're like, oh, we hit every single need that I had from the very beginning of the phone call with us, maybe, or like your initial design vision. Like we hit all the must-haves, and I know my property is going to stand out from the competition. Versus you're in the install process and you're having to pull back on things. That's always a bad feeling, and it's always a bummer, having to edit and take things out that you were so excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward here, the next 12 months or so, what are some of your guys' goals, and where do you kind of see this partnership headed?
Yeah, we see it going a long way. I mean, we've been blown away in the past year that we've been in business, how much need there is in the space for short-term rental design. I think, like we were saying earlier, like lots of investors are now taking this seriously as a business. So it's almost like design, like hiring, marketing for your business or hiring designers for their short-term rentals. So our goals here are to just keep expanding, keep interacting with people in the space. It's a tight-knit group space, as we were talking about earlier, of the people who are taking it seriously, and we want to expand that network and connect with more people, grow. I mean, the sky's the limit, honestly, at what we can take on. Currently, we're doing about 16 projects every single month, and we've created a model within our business to allow us to continue to grow that. So we're here for the growth. We are also in talks with some other big projects that we can't say right now, but we're excited to launch them and get into like a new network or, new connections with people.
Yeah, I love that. Where can folks, if they're interested in using your services, where can they learn more about it?
Probably our Instagram or website is the best way to find us. We're just at somerled.designs.
And it's Summer like my last name.
Exactly,
SOMER.
exactly. Spelled the same way, just Somerled at the end there. And then just Somerled Designs is the website, just somerleddesigns.com.
I love it. I appreciate you ladies coming on the show. I got to have more ladies and females on the show. It's definitely, it's an honor, and it was a pleasure to have a conversation with you guys.
Yeah,
thank you for having
well.
us.
Thank you so much.
Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.